So in the previous video, I gave you a few questions on inverse functions to have a go at, see if you got your head around the basics of the topic. What I'm going to do in this video is talk you through those questions, what the solutions do with you, and show you how to approach them. Quick reminder for you though, these are the 4 questions that I posed. So calculate the inverse of each of the following functions. F of x equals 3x plus 7, f of x equals x cubed plus 1, f of x equals 1 over x plus 2, and f of x equals 1/5 x minus 4. Now this is a standard you want to get to for exam time. This is where you want to be for inverse functions. You have to be able to do all of this and combinations thereof. So let's have a look at some of these then. So the first one was f of x equals 3x plus 7. Now when you're approaching a question like this, there are several ways to do it. The best way is to start by rewriting it as y equals. So get rid of the f of x and start with y equals 3x plus 7. Then switch the x and the y. So in this case I would then switch it to be x equals 3y plus 7. What we now have to do is rearrange this whole thing and rearrange it to get y equals. If we rearrange it to get to y equals, we get an inverse form of our function, and then we're able to write our final part of the solution. So first thing to get rid of is the plus 7. So I then say fine, so 3y equals x minus 7. And if I then divide both sides by 3, I get to my line I want, y equals, and then I have x minus 7 over 3. Now the issue is that's not the inverse function. We have to then take a final step and write f minus 1 of x. This means inverse function. You have to have this stated to show that you're at the inverse stage. And in this case we just write f minus 1 of x equals x minus 7 over 3. If you don't state it this way with the f minus 1 part to begin with, you're actually not going to get the final mark because you've not shown that you understand this is the inverse function and this is how we note it. So please make sure you do that final step there. Second example, f of x equals x cubed plus 1. Again, same approach. Start by saying y equals x cubed plus 1 and then switch the x and the y. So I know that x equals y cubed plus 1. Then manipulate it and work your way down to get y equals again as your final line. First thing I get rid of is the plus 1. So I get y cubed equals x minus 1. Remember, plus 1 here when it shifts over becomes a minus. We then have to get rid of the cubed, and remember to get rid of a cubed we take a cube root. So in this case I know y equals the cube root of x minus 1. We've got our final part, we now need to turn it into the inverse. So we then have to go back to our f minus 1 of x and say f minus 1 of x equals the cube root of x minus 1. So we've finally got the final version of our inverse there. That's the final part, and again, you have to include the f minus 1 of x, but otherwise you won't get all the marks that are on offer and available for any of these types of questions. Third one was f of x equals 1 over x plus 2, so we're introducing fractional parts to it this time. But again, you start the exact same way. So y equals 1 over x plus 2, and then swap them. X equals 1 over y plus 2. Now, we want to get y equals again, but the issue is y is on the bottom on this side. So first thing we have to do is get this up the top. So what you can do is if you times both sides by y plus 2, what happens is you get rid of it on the bottom here and you introduce it to the top on this side. So we get x bracket y plus 2 equals, y plus 2 divided by y plus 2 just gives me 1. We then want to manipulate and get rid of things on this side, so we're left with just y equals. First thing to do is get rid of the x, move it over here, and we get y plus 2 equals 1 over x, because remember this is x times, so to get rid of the times, we divide. We then have to shift the plus 2. So we know y equals 1 over x minus 2. Now be very careful with the way you note this. It's the fraction 1 over x, then take away 2. It's not 1 over x minus 2. That is not the way it needs to be noted. You need to make sure it's clearly done in ones like this, and it's clearly done at this stage. Once you've done that, you then take it and put it in its inverse form. So f minus 1 of x equals 1 over x take away 2. So it becomes like that. Again, watch the notation part here with the minus 2. It's not this, it's this. Final example I gave you was f of x equals 1/5 x minus 4. Again, same approach. Y equals 1/5 x minus 4, and then swap your x and your y. So you know that x equals 1/5 y take away 4. It's then shifting things around and working it through. Now remember, we work backwards with BODMAS, so first thing we get rid of is the subtraction here. So we then say 1/5 y equals x plus 4. We then get rid of the fifth by multiplying by 5. So y equals 5, bracket, x plus 4. If you multiplied out the bracket at this point, that would be fine. You wouldn't lose any marks for it, but you could be fine just leaving it like that. We then substitute in for the inverse part, so f minus 1 of x equals 5 bracket x plus 4, and that's you got it done there. That's us got our inverse form. Remember to note it with this notation. It has to be written as f minus 1 of x, otherwise you will not get that final mark. Be very, very aware of that. Good luck, hope this went well. I'll see you in class for a bit more work.